America is not a safe place to work. And obviously, those of us living here understand that right now, what with deregulations and the threat of the National Guard or perhaps a different division of the military showing up to police you. No. This statement is actually coming from the South Korean workers that were rounded up at gunpoint last month on September 4th at that Hyundai plant in the state of Georgia. These workers, who again were rounded up at gunpoint while working, which Donald Trump says he went out of his way to secure these investments into the United States to bring these people into work, rounded up at gunpoint, detained in conditions that they claimed were human rights abuses for a week before they were sent back home. Those are the people telling other South Koreans, telling Americans, and telling the rest of the world that America is not a safe place to work. And that, of course, is going to be very bad for the U.S. economy. In a lengthy piece for the New York Times recently, they actually spoke to some of these workers that were at that Hyundai plant in Georgia. And they talked about, as I've said, being rounded up at gunpoint. ICE agents barged in, Customs and Border Patrol, guns drawn, and said, get outside right now. That's according to them. That's what they said. And these people were here, most of them, completely legally. They were doing a job. They were contributing to the United States economy. Part of a job that, again, as Trump says, like he's worked out these deals for South Korea to invest hundreds of billions of dollars. And now that those hundreds of billions, which probably weren't going to materialize to begin with, he's a little overblown, may not materialize at all. South Korean officials following the raid even admitted, like, hey, this is probably going to make it more difficult for any companies in our country to even want to go to the United States. And now that these workers are speaking out to the New York Times, warning workers from any country, this place isn't safe because of Trump and his people, do you really think that Europe is going to invest $600 billion in the U.S.? No. Do you think Argentina is? Do you think Brazil is? Do you think Canada wants to after Donald Trump continues to threaten to annex them? Do you think Denmark and Greenland are going to do that? Do you think any other Asian countries are willing to do this after watching what happens to these workers? And for the record, the reason South Korea says we had to bring in our own workers is because nobody in the U.S. knows how to do this, right? This is our proprietary intellectual property. So we're going to do it. And in terms of all the other things that Americans do know how to do, there simply weren't people willing to do it. So we had to bring in our people. And the problem, as South Korea explained, this administration didn't give us enough visas. So we were kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. And yeah, we had to bring in some people that weren't necessarily documented. And with the rest of the people that were documented, because of the limited number of visas, we had to rotate them out. So every few months, we had to send the experienced ones back, bring over a bunch of rookies, get them trained, so the project takes longer than it should. And that, of course, is also a warning to the rest of the world. Sure, Donald Trump says he wants you to come. Sure, he says he wants your money and your investments in your companies, but he won't do what's necessary to allow your business to succeed. And even if you start to succeed, you never know when ICE is going to come busting through your front door. If I were a company operating outside of the U.S., considering coming to the U.S., it'd be off the table 100% while this guy's in office. And honestly, that's what should happen. I'm not saying I want the U.S. to fail. I definitely do not. I want us to succeed. Even if Trump is president, I would love to see the economy boom. I would love to see everybody making more money and getting healthcare and getting the things they need and a cleaner environment. If it happens under a Republican, good. Like, oh no, we have a better life. I'm not ever going to wish for worse. But there is absolutely no incentive for these foreign businesses to come over to this country based on the way this administration is treating them. They're not rolling out the red carpet. We only do that for Vladimir Putin. For the rest of you, we'll beg you to come over, and the second you do, we're going to arrest all your workers at gunpoint. That is the message, whether they intended it to be or not, that this administration has sent to every business around the globe. And that is going to hurt the U.S. economy in ways that Trump can't even fathom. Donald Trump's immigration policies have been a complete and total disaster, no matter which way you slice it. Morally, it's obviously been a disaster. Economically, it's hurting the United States. Politically, it's put Trump underwater on his main campaign issue, right? The big thing, immigration, he is underwater in. A majority of Americans disapprove of what he's done. So again, it doesn't matter how you look at it, from the humanitarian perspective, from the economic perspective, or just from plain old politics, Trump has failed across the board. And it's not just Trump, too. Obviously, Kristi Noem, with Homeland Security in charge of ICE, in charge of Customs and Border Patrol, in charge of these immigration raids, she has failed as well. And Republicans in Congress, who recently gave ICE $45 billion to build new detention facilities, they're starting to ask questions such as, where's the money going and why aren't you building these concentration camps we gave you the money to build? So amid all of these failures, obviously Trump can't take the blame. Obviously Kristi Noem can't. So White House insiders, according to a new report, have found a new scapegoat to blame for all of the immigration policy failures that this administration is experiencing. And it is the man who has been rumored to be having an affair with Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski. Now, I don't know, and I don't even care if the affair rumors are true or not, because that's totally irrelevant, but I bring it up because it is a thing that is rumored. One insider called it the worst kept secret in Washington, D.C. But affairs aside, Corey Lewandowski, much like Stephen Miller, is an absolute goblin troll that should be living under a bridge instead of dictating who gets to stay in this country. And according to insiders in the White House, all of the problems they got right now is because Corey Lewandowski is not doing what he's supposed to do. Now, the big irony here is that they don't really know what he's supposed to be doing, but by God, they are certain he's the one that should be doing something, and he's not, so it's all his fault. Let me read you this. 8 current and former officials at ICE and Department of Homeland Security told me that they blame Corey Lewandowski, the longtime Trump world figure who is a special government employee at DHS and functions as the unofficial chief of staff to Secretary Kristi Noem. Lewandowski has operated as a gatekeeper for Noem, especially since June, when the department implemented a new policy requiring her to sign off on any contract exceeding $100,000. There's extreme frustration that the president's agenda when it comes to ICE, beds, and therefore deportations is not going to happen. The White House has worked for months to get the reconciliation bill over the finish line. Why did you just lobby Congress for months saying you needed the money if you don't intend to use it? So I guess what they're mad about is that we're not building concentration camps fast enough. And they think Corey Lewandowski's the one holding that up? If Corey Lewandowski had the ability to put together concentration camps on every block in the United States, he would do it. He would do it without hesitation. I would be broadcasting right now from one of Lewandowski's concentration camps if he were the guy. And I'm not trying to defend him and say it's not his fault, but this seems like an all-around everybody involved is just not doing the things they're supposed to be doing for the furtherment of evil in the United States. Because let's be real, these failures, which I have said this many times, the failures, the incompetence of this administration may be the one thing that actually saves the country. So if Corey Lewandowski is the one dropping the ball and not building new concentration camps, then sweet, awesome. Keep not doing whatever it is you're not doing. We don't need more. We don't want more. In fact, they're also blaming Lewandowski for the fact that since June, deportations, arrests, and detainments have fallen. We're running out of people to round up. So if that is Lewandowski's fault, then hey, congrats, you're destroying their plans from the inside. And for that, I will tell you, I am eternally grateful. Keep it up, buddy. If you are, in fact, the reason more people aren't being rounded up and thrown in concentration camps, then I applaud your service to this country. So based on the demographics that I see, the age demographics for my channel, it's pretty much a safe assumption to assume that at least 95% of people that regularly watch my segments, you guys were alive and obviously mature enough to watch the run-up to the Iraq invasion by the Bush administration. You remember the lies, you remember Colin Powell, you remember the DOJ memos that came out years later justifying, excusing, and allowing the use of torture against detainees at Guantanamo Bay and various other black sites around the world. In other words, you remember how the administration, the Bush administration, lied to us about everything and used the DOJ to manipulate the law to excuse the war crimes they were committing. And the reason I bring that up is because recently, just last week, we got a leaked memo from the Trump administration justifying his illegal strikes on boats in the Caribbean that are allegedly these drug cartels. And the memo reads exactly like the crap we got out of the Bush administration. We are already repeating that history with Donald Trump to justify his war crimes. And yes, according to the International Criminal Court at The Hague, these are war crimes. In fact, as I discussed last week, a Heritage Foundation fellow, a law professor at the Scalia School of Law, a MAGA lawyer, already admitted Trump could easily be prosecuted at The Hague for this particular war crime of bombing these boats. But here is what we got. Let me read you this. This is from the report about the memo. The legal opinion, which was produced by the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel and has not been previously reported, argues that the president is allowed to authorize deadly force against a broad range of cartels because they pose an imminent threat to Americans. The list of cartels goes beyond those the administration has publicly designated as terrorist organizations, the people familiar with the opinion said. And then CNN reported, by this logic, any small, medium, or big group that is trafficking drugs into the U.S., the administration could claim it amounts to an attack against the United States and respond with lethal force, said one former Department of Defense attorney. Meanwhile, current Judge Advocates General told CNN that even officials who disagree with the assessment cannot defy an Office of Legal Counsel opinion. One said, quote, "The way forward is just to eat it and put your head down and act in accordance with Hegseth's new policies. No JAG is trying to rock the boat or get noticed." So in other words, these Judge Advocates General that are currently serving, these JAG officers currently serving, are telling us that this is going to be a situation where you just have to follow orders. Doesn't matter if those orders are illegal. Doesn't mean if those orders are human rights violations. Doesn't matter if those orders are war crimes. Legally, you have to just follow orders. Now, what's horrible about that for the soldiers who are just following orders is later on, you can still be prosecuted for that. If not here in the United States, then over at The Hague. So keep that in mind. Yeah, it may be illegal for you to defy the orders. You may get court-martialed for it, but that's probably going to be a better punishment than whatever The Hague institutes upon you. So, got to weigh out those options there, right, soldiers? It's so bad, in fact, that John Yoo, who, again, a lot of you probably remember from the first Bush or the W. Bush administration, John Yoo, the guy that authored the torture memos justifying war crimes for the Bush administration, even he came out recently and was like, holy war crimes, you can't just bomb boats with no justification. Yoo said, quote, there has to be a line between crime and war. We can't just consider anything that harms the country to be a matter for the military because that could potentially include every crime. Says the guy who said, no, torture these people. It's totally legal. Go for it. Put the electrodes on them and light them up like Christmas trees in that infamous Abu Ghraib photo. Like, even he is like, holy crap, you guys, this is bad. Like, I'm an evil person, but Jesus, that's what he's telling us. It doesn't matter how they justify it. It's illegal. On top of it, and this is something that cannot get lost in the shuffle, there's no evidence these were even cartel boats. We don't know. They haven't shared the evidence. They've just said, oh no, we think it is. That's not good enough. You're killing human beings. But this is the secret war plan. They're launching war against these boats. It's been leaked. We know about it now. We know their justification. There is no justification. And eventually, the lower down, the subordinates, the ones who carried out these attacks, they're going to be the ones held responsible for just following orders. It's no secret that Donald Trump's mental and physical health is essentially in the toilet. The guy is getting more feeble by the day, his brain is deteriorating by the day, and these are all visible, things that we can see, things that we notice. The bruises, the cankles, the inability to stand like a normal human being, the lack of balance, the tripping up the stairs, which he mocks Biden for to this day. He does it himself. But all of this paints the picture of a very feeble 79-year-old man who may not be long for the world. And it appears that even Donald Trump himself knows it. Trump has repeatedly mused about the afterlife recently, which of course is somebody who, whether conscious or not, knows they're kind of at the end. They will start to spend more and more time thinking about the afterlife. And Trump has made several comments over the last few months, as recently as last week, about getting into heaven. But during these talks about getting into heaven, Donald Trump also admitted that he is a horrible person and that he makes a choice to be a horrible person. Let me read you his most recent comments on the matter. He did this last week when he was talking about an America Praise initiative for the 250th birthday of the country next year. And he said, quote, there's no reason to be good. Like, that's the whole point. That's the big takeaway. That is the one sentence I want you to remember, but I'll finish. I want to be good because you want to prove to God you're good so you can go to that next step, right? That's very important to me. I think it's really very important. I felt for a long time that if a country doesn't have religion, doesn't have faith, doesn't have God, it's going to be very hard to be a good country. There's no reason to be good. And before you think, well, maybe this was a slip of the tongue, he said this last year, or this summer, on Fox News. He said, I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I hear I'm really at the bottom of the totem pole. And then he told Todd Starnes, conservative talk radio host, quote, people get punished if they're not good, right? If you don't think about that, if you're not a believer and you believe you go nowhere, what's the reason to be good, really? There has to be some kind of a report card up there someplace, like let's go to heaven, let's get into heaven, and it's sort of a beautiful thing. So he has admitted multiple times that as a human being, there's no reason to be good. Like, why not be as evil as humanly possible? Oh, yeah, God will strike you down. Okay. So my fear of God and my desire to get into heaven and get that eternal reward, is the only reason I'm good. Because if it weren't for that, what? You'd be out stealing, taking food away from the hungry, not helping the sick, turning away the migrants, locking up people, right? You'd be doing those things that, oh, wait, you already do. Trump is not a good person. And this is an admission that, yeah, he chooses to be bad because every now and then he's not thinking about the afterlife. But then he thinks about it and he's like, okay, well, now I got to be good for a couple days. That'll get on my report card, as he calls it. If you're a good person and you do good things, but you only behave that way because you are afraid of God's vengeance, then I have news for you. One, you're not a good person. Two, they actually call that out in the Bible, okay? And you're going to hell. So all your work to pretend to be a good person is still going to land you in the pit of suffering. That's actually how that works. And if you believe in nothing, why be good? Like, to me, that statement, I can't even wrap my head around it because that's not something a normal person would consider. It's something a psychopath or a sociopath would, right? It's something that somebody without a moral compass would think, like, oh, well, there is no afterlife. I'll just go kill people. Like, no, that's not a normal thought. I'll just steal from everybody. Not a normal thought. You be a good person because it's what you do. Not because you feel compelled to do it, but because it's just how things are. It's just how you are. Like, it's just such a natural thing that honestly, I can't even explain it, I don't get how anybody can look at this convicted felon, a guy with all kinds of accusations from women against him too, a guy who's broken maybe every single commandment and think that he is the epitome of a guy that's going to go to heaven. Or that he's even just a good person in general. Being good is not something you do out of fear. Not killing people is not what you do because you're afraid of God's wrath or jail. It's because you know it's wrong. And if you don't know that it's wrong, if the only thing stopping you from doing bad things is fear of punishment, then you're not a good person. I can't believe I even have to explain that, but I hope MAGA listens to that message. If you're suppressing urges to go commit crimes, you're not a good person for suppressing them. You're a disturbed person for having those urges in the first place.